Please listen carefully.
Ready places. Harv and Vaughn is live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, I am the Ronin Pawn.
And I am Harvey, and welcome back to Harv and Pawn.
It's going to be a sloppy friggin' show today. I am...
Sloppy?
Yeah, I'm what you'd call knackered. Haggard. Are there any other, mostly Britishisms for being very tired and having pulled an all-nighter?
Oh. No, but I can think of ones which sound as if they could be real things, like absolutely thrashed, absolutely devastated.
That actually reminds me, there's, I'm aware of, some terminology that I'd never heard before, but that you cannot use, in publishing, in the lands of Britain, when referring to the possibility that someone's drunk because of, political... Because you cannot, it's considered slander by the law to use this one very cultural term for being drunk in a bar. And I think it was somebody who described a politician as it, and it went to court and everything. You're clearly not familiar with that.
No. But do you remember what it was?
No, of course I don't. I'm knackered, I'm haggard, if anybody in chat knows what the hell I'm talking about, Hologram One, Pony, and Sir Emo Chappington. Sir Emo Chappington, surely you are aware of that of which I speak, yes? What word are you trying to describe here? British here, and I have no clue what you mean. Tired and emotional, says Charlie Chili. That's exactly it. Tired and emotional, which is a underhanded way of saying they were drunk. And you're not allowed to use those terms in the written text unless you can prove that they were drunk. I love that.
Oh, what? Tired and emotional as a subtext for being drunk. What? You could just... But if you said that in Britain today, people would think you just mean tired and emotional. They wouldn't think, oh, he's actually trying to say that they're drunk. And that's not a thing.
This is why I love you guys. Just Europe in general, you have like histories that don't start with like slavery. I mean, they start with other things, but there's a rich body and volume of things. It's like, how the hell does that become a term or a process or something? Well, we've been around for several thousand years. You know, 300-400-year-old people wouldn't get it.
There is interesting kind of etymology, not just of phrases, but of words particularly. There's one that I always keep on coming back to, which I find it just interesting. Do you know why we call beef beef and not like cow meat or just cow?
No.
So, beef is rather reminiscent of the French boeuf, right? Or boeuf, or however it's pronounced.
I was
I don't know,
sure that
something
French
like
was
that.
going to come into this explanation at some point. I was thinking like
Of
BF,
course.
like BIEF. Like, does that sound familiar? Where's this going?
Yeah, so boeuf, let's just assume it's pronounced something reminiscent of that sound that my mouth just made. When the Normans invaded and they built all a load of castles and lived in them, you didn't eat cow in a castle, you ate boeuf. And so it became the kind of, you know, and every man in Britain has his own castle and that's his home. And so on the dinner table, you eat beef. And that is the way it turned into the food being beef rather than just the name of the animal. Because, like, you eat chicken, and that's just what a chicken is. So that distinction came from the Norman invasion of Britain. There you go.
No one expects the French Inquisition.
Whoopah 64. This is all live. Don't you fret, my dear.
No,
We're
he's
talking
just,
to you through the internet.
I'm okay. So I'm a, you know, I used to practice as a Zen Buddhist monk. So actually, what we do is, I look into the future before the shows, and then we just record it, and it's just easier that way. You know, it saves us a lot of editing, and my left hand controlling the stream here with a numpad, so that we can. Hey, look, it's me. Hey, let's go to the wide shot. Hey, Houston, what's going on over there? It's just easier. You know, it would be so much more difficult if I were controlling everything while having a conversation with Harvey.
Hey, Houston. What is going on over there?
Oh, god damn it.
Oh, come on, Bon.
Don't look at me.
There you go.
Sorry, Houston. We didn't mean to bother you with that one. That's kind of rude of us.
What? Oh, God, I spilled coffee all over. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
No.
Sorry.
My deepest apologies. So yes,
Our producer,
Whoopah,
Houston.
if this is your first time watching, by God, Whoopah, you are in for a treat because many people, surely hundreds if not thousands of people are saying that this, the Harv and Bon show, is the hottest thing on the internet right now.
Mm-hmm. We're the fidget spinner before it got started. The underground
With a fidget spinner before all the kids took it up, when it was old, grungy, underground fidget spinner battling.
That and, you
Before
know,
it became
we're
cool.
Tide Pods before the cool kids started eating them. Is that too soon?
Back when
Too
it was
soon?
just sad middle-aged men having a crisis. Yeah.
I'm just gonna crack a beer. I've had a hard day at work. And crack a beer, sit down, watch some Netflix, and eat some Tide Pods, and nobody talk to me. Don't at me, bruh.
There you go. Ooh. Lo-Fi Loop says probably the same with the French word pork for pork. Yeah, pig, pork. Interesting. Etymology. Etymology is one of those things where it's like, it sounds like it should be a science, but really it's just very investigative history, tracing back the origins of things and words.
Yeah, I
and
feel like
ideas.
half my activity on the internet is looking up, like, why is that a thing? Like, where did that term come from? At least a third of my search history is like, what? With just weird phrases that we've all come to use. That's like, but now that I think about that, what the hell does that have anything to do? One of my favorites, so home movies, is there was Dr. Katz, home movies, and I feel like there's connective tissue to Frisky Dingo and stuff that's modern, but these older animations, they were produced, their production house's name was Soup to Nuts. And I'd never heard the term soup to nuts before. And I'm like, what is soup to nuts before? It's, it's how you start and end a meal. From the way back, you'd start with soup and you'd end with nuts for dessert. So soup to
Really?
nuts. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
I never knew.
Thank
Interesting.
God for Wikipedia. And for people who, keep track of these things. Be lost to history. People just using the term soup to nuts, and they wouldn't know, and you wouldn't know why they're using it. But actually, etymology leads pretty well into, if we want to make the turn quickly into the topic today, leads pretty easily into our topic for today, which is sort of short creative writing works that Harv and I have produced over the years, and that maybe have never been heard before. Some that have. But
Did you say short creative writing works? Hang on, I need to
oh,
throw
okay.
away these 74 pages I've got down here.
So brief excerpts from incredibly long novellas.
Yeah, it's more like it.
Just full-on novels, which also, that's what I was going to say is, so if we do just jump into this, I have something to read that it's like little short bits and stuff, and it's comedic, and it comes from, there's a game online called Improbable Island, which is this text-based adventure where, it's just literally like random rolls walking through a forest, but it's all about the storytelling of the text. I mean, huge long pages of text. And I got into Improbable Island some time ago and just loved the feel of it and the fact that it was centered around writing and the developer as an author writing these really interesting, really funny little stories and coming up with different enemies that you'd fight in the middle of the woods. The idea behind Improbable Island, by the way, as an aside, is that you have been dropped onto an island where somebody made an improbability machine, which I think manipulates quantum stuff in order to make the unlikely likely and the likely unlikely. So
It's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy's engine.
Yeah,
the infinite
basically that.
improbability drive.
Yep. So somebody, I think the lore of this is that somebody built an improbability drive on this island for testing. It got out of hand because it's an improbability drive, and they had to sort of abandon the project. But it was still there, still in operation. So some years later, they centered a television show around dropping people onto Improbable Island and then just following what happens with cameras. So there's pretty deep lore for a text-based adventure, which really just...
I love that.
Yeah, and it really just sets up the developer and author of this game to basically have as much fun as you could possibly have with writing, which is, Hitchhiker's Guide all over again.
There's actually a Hitchhiker's Guide text adventure.
Oh, yeah?
Which I'll have to send to you at some point, just someone remind me about that. If someone has a link, find it and send it to us later. But so are you wanting to read a little bit out from that?
I want to read a little bit out from something that I wrote in it because I was so inspired. The author ends up with you like fighting toasters in the jungle and weird things. And I believe, and this could be important, this will be important to what I'm about to read. I believe at some point he does this really like campy Bugs Bunny kind of like joke where you're supposed to go somewhere, somebody's called you out, please meet me over here. You get like a letter and then you travel in game, typing where you want to go and that kind of stuff to the place to meet the person who reached out via the world's in-game sort of communication system, emails. And you get there and it turns out to be a lion in disguise who drops the cloak and starts fighting you. So you walk up and there's all this descriptive text about like he's got very large furry feet underneath the cloak and weird stuff like that. And then it just turns out to be a lion that jumps you. And then it turns into a fight. So I was inspired by like just what he was doing with it. And the game has a mechanic where other players are like given the incentive to click a button each day to share a skill with like a new player. So I was shared a skill when I was early on here from someone, and I decided that I was going to reach out in the voice of the character, the in-game character that I decided to do, which was Wilkins McCauber. Wilkins
You've
Micawber
mentioned this.
Yeah.
I remember now.
is a character from Charles Dickens, and I am a huge Dickens fan. Dickens is just incredibly verbose, and Wilkins Micawber is the most verbose character I think that Dickens ever wrote. And I just like that he just drawls on and on and on and on, and says he's not going to complain about himself and his lot in life, and then complains about himself and his lot in life. So I reached out to this person who just randomly clicked, and it automatically selected who it was going to give to, and wrote them an email, and it goes: By placing quill to paper here, I certainly do not intend to distract or make bother for the most honorable and virtuous personage of Miss Hellbore, to whom I now address this message. It would be a great sorrow indeed for me to think that I had furrowed her brow in the slightest degree, whom has been so generous in my regards as late. I would be taken most horribly to find that I'd made myself a nuisance in her eyes, who delivers such benevolence upon each living creature, whose footsteps, by God's graces, place them thankfully in her way. What unearthly torment would rend my very heart a-twain should I discover, in simple errancy only, that I had but wasted one precious moment of her most invaluable time. May the Lord of creation know my heart is true to the words I here inscribe. You may consider me upon bended knee, figuratively speaking, as I now offer my most humble gratitude for the gifts I have recently received of your most liberal and delicate hand, this being mainly my edification in the art of time to combat. Your tutelage has opened my eyes to worlds hitherto unknown to me, and I consider myself most pleasantly indebted to you, for there must be no greater pleasantry on the island than to be bound in any way, even under debt, to one so pure and magnanimous as yourself. In other words, I thank you, your ever humble servant, Wilkins Micawber. And this is just opening letter 1, because she wrote back to me, and I was like, oh, you are in for it now. And I launched into a 5-letter thing that's each one is growing more detail, more depth. I'm writing my own stories within stories about where I traveled in the lands, and I'm sorry I can't come to meet you because of these circumstances. But I look back on that, right, and I just love it.
One important question. When she came back to you with a reply, what was the reply?
I do not remember, and I do not have a record of it, but I believe it was nothing that was, it was probably 3 lines, 3 sentences, a short paragraph.
I mean, do you remember at least whether it was in some sort of character, or was it just okay, lol?
Oh no, yes, she was definitely in character. She definitely stayed in world with it, because I had absolutely set the tone of that. So yeah,
that would have been terrible.
I do remember in game, I eventually met her because there was a chat square, where it was live chat, and I managed to catch up with her and see her in the chat square, and I walked up and started speaking to her without introducing myself, because you can see the names in chat, and I went on and on and on and on, and then she went, I'm sorry, who are you again? And I was like, oh yes, of course, I haven't.
Surely by your manner of speech, she should have remembered who you were.
Oh yes, absolutely. But just in world, she totally caught me up with that, in the role-playing here, I can't see that your name is Wilkins Micawber. So you have to say, hello, I'm Wilkins Micawber, the person you've been communicating with. But that was,
of course, my esteemed associate, I am the one and only Wilkins Micawber.
Oh yeah,
so
and
good
then
to make your
absolutely,
acquaintance.
Once she caught me out in that was probably 3 paragraphs of, I am so, what a fool I must have been, how to present myself before you in such a way, just on and on and on before I actually said, I am the good Wilkins Micawber, your humble servant.
Brilliant. Oh, and 100 bits from Rex Skates. Happy holidays all. Thank you very much, Rex. And also thank you to Dramacian, who resubscribed just earlier. So, thanks to the both of you. Much appreciated.
Yes.
Have you been voting in the poll? Have the 2 of you voted in the poll? Actually, or Rex, I don't know if you... Have the one of you... Is Rex... Are you subscribed, Rex? Regardless, all of those of you who are watching right now who are either a patron or subscribed on Twitch, There is a poll where you can vote on which discussion topic we should talk about in the coming weeks. We only get a few people actually voting on them, and we have more people who are subscribed who could be voting on them, so do that. Awesome stuff.
Ah, my good Miss Hellbore, it delights me to hear from you. I am thoroughly ashamed for my lack of expedience in the drafting of the document you have before you now. Though one could make several arguments to the effect that my delay has been unavoidable, I shall not, for I feel such postulations are of no regard in the face of one's duty to a gentle and noble creature such as yourself. And it goes on, and on, and on.
I mean, I'd be up for a stream where it's just you going on and on and on. That would be fine.
I mean, that's just my live streams at twitch.tv/RonanPaw on Thursdays and Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's 9 p.m. in the UK.
You self-promoting, my good sir?
Of characters such as myself should never likely to do such a thing with under and forthwith and thereby.
Under and forthwith and thereby. Yes. There's a great video called Reggie Watts Disorients You in the Most Entertaining Way. Have you ever seen that video? Ah, it's fantastic. It's comedian Reggie Watts, and he just kind of goes on talking like this, where in our modern outspoken society, there are things we see today that, as they may be, as are not that they are. For the interdimensional particles with the cross-correlation of the correlation of their coefficients be... And so, with 1/8 of an ounce of an inch to within that most distinguishable of esteemed guests, I do see that it is as it should be. And this is as it should be, for once upon a time, in the secondary state of the elementary particle system, the subatomic was. And just keeps going, and like he just ends sentences halfway through, but the intonation is always so perfect that it really feels like a lecture. It's a TED Talk. He went and gave this TED Talk, but just... something about moving through space and just, yeah, it was great.
The Jack
so,
and
Emo
O, thank you
Chappington.
for subscribing.
I
love the
yes.
idea of that, somebody just going on and saying nothing whatsoever, but sort of the
It's very...
spoken word version of those things that you see on the internet where if you take, like, if you've got the right letters and they're completely, but it's the same word shape and everything, you can read it. Sort of that.
Oh,
with, like,
yeah,
thoughts.
reminiscent of those.
Mm.
You know, it's actually a genuine problem that I face regularly, where I find that I really want to write and voice act and narrate something, but I'm so, like, lacking in topics to specifically talk about that my brain will turn to, I can just write about nothing, you know? Why do I need, if I've got the voice and the intonation and the words, why do those words need to be about anything? Why not just write nothing? And I always kind of swallow it and push it down, because I can do that once, and I could maybe do that twice, but doing it 3 times, at that point, I'm just spewing crap out onto the internet that's not contributing anything. It's just pure nonsense in and of itself, and there's no value to it. It's just, I don't want to do that, but it's so tempting.
Participating on the internet at that point.
I mean,
spewing crap.
Yeah. I would like to have a net positive impact on the internet in one shape or another. I feel like that is just net zero, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's very tempting. And,
net zero?
Yeah.
No. They've, since the days of the 56K modem, they pretty much went out of business. Net zero.
I don't get that reference.
Net zero, because it was...
Nope.
Rex Skates said in chat a bit earlier, and I remember this, that he taught dance. What kind of dance was it at Charles Dickens Fair? Worked at Dickens Fair teaching Victorian dance, because Rex is just a Fred Astaire. He says that I should come out to a Dickens Fair because I could be Wilkins Macabre at the Dickens Fair in San Francisco.
Rex asks, did porn flip Harv's camera so letters are wrong? I have to face this way. So I'm fairly sure. I mean, if you've said it, then it's probably true, but...
Oh, wrong one.
Uh,
No, they just printed that backwards, that's all.
yeah, yeah. It's good because I don't want to be showing off the brand, you know?
Whoa,
I'm
whoa,
not,
whoa. Sir
not
Emo
sponsored.
Chappington, an audiobook recently, I think from David Mitchell
Oh,
of Mitchell and Webb. The preface is like 10 minutes long, rambling into time travel about how King Henry VII would feel if he saw the audiobook in a time before the audiobook existed and how this would influence the cultural impact through nonlinear causality.
oh, I mean, we've both discussed, we already talked about it previously, didn't we? That David Mitchell has got some awesome stuff.
Yeah.
I would like to read that. That's
Hmm.
interesting. But rather than reading that, because I don't have it to hand, how about I read something that I wrote a while ago? Would that be suitable,
No, I don't think so.
do you
I
think?
think I think
Oh,
we
okay.
peaked with my Wilkins McCall. We should call it a day.
Good day's work. Thanks for everyone for coming out.
We'll see you
So
next
this was interesting. However, um, I have a thing for game storylines. For some reason, it's really easy to write a storyline that would be suitable for a game because you can kind of write the whole synopsis quite compactly without worrying about making it into a novel that has to be X many pages long. And there's something, do you have any kind of idea what I'm hinting at? Like, there's some difference between game story writing and novel story writing that just makes the whole process feel a little bit more encapsulated. I don't know.
Hmm.
But either way, what this resulted in throughout the years has been several kind of concepts for games which don't have much more than a story to them. And the one that I put the most work into was a couple of years ago now. And this was going to be a story for Calm Your Temper, which is a work in progress title for a game. What I wrote was kind of what the intro would be in the game, but from a first person kind of story perspective. I'll just read it and we can see
Was it meant
how
as
it
a
goes.
voiceover or?
I guess it could have been, but it probably wouldn't have been because it's not suitable to have a 6-minute voiceover at the start of a video game.
Well,
Like,
you
yeah,
ask some of the
it's
major
kind of
publishers; they're not afraid of wasting your time with not playing a game when you open a game.
hey, you horse thief, you were trying to cross the border into yeah. So calm your temper.
All right, Jesus.
Working here sucks. You don't get to be a lab technician researching new improvements to calm. You don't even get to be on the plant floor, keeping the equipment running smoothly. Even the guys hauling crates out of the stuff out into the lorries have it better than you. Laura Blott, once a young girl with aspirations of making a difference, instead has to sweep the floors. Sweep the floors, and mop them, and generally clear up after everyone else. The guards at this place are either lazy, crazy, or drunk, and yet even they get paid more than you. When everyone can see what everyone else earns, it's hard not to resent them. You spot a mess across on the opposite side of the plant floor. Someone dropped a crate of calm and didn't even bother to clean it up. Little white pills are spilled everywhere, but that's why you're here, right? You make your way over, past some lab techs who notice you, then where you're heading, before sniggering together. Dicks. Stooping down, you carefully pick the uncracked bottles up off the floor and place them back into the crate. Can't afford to let those go to waste, when literally everybody needs them. Pausing for a moment, you seem to hear a noise from the wall next to you. Hushed voices on the other side. Then a beep, followed by hurried footsteps. Silence. The wall beside you explodes open, slamming you to the ground as pieces of brick are flung into the plant. Through the hole stream blurry shapes, clutching bats and crowbars clad in makeshift armor. Finally, two figures stand above you, silhouetted by the flames. Whoa! We're lucky she's alive, says the woman, as the man kneels down into view and lifts you up. Your vision blurs. Are you okay? The screaming behind you fades away as the two figures carry you out through the hole and everything goes black. Reality returns, and you find yourself lying on a bed. Beside you, a group of teenagers are chatting, painting artwork on the walls of the large underground bunker you appear to have woken up in. "She's awake!" one notices, before dashing off, calling for Jason. Maybe the man who saved you from the attack? What was that? And why did they bring you here? The man and the woman return, though the woman is more of a girl, close to your own age. "Hi there, how are you feeling?" Dressed all in blacks and greys, a belt of tools around her waist, crowbar hanging from her hip, the girl leans in close and inspects you. She's pretty, prettier than you, for sure. Whipping out a torch, the girl shines it briefly in each of your eyes. "Yep, you're good. Much quicker response than yesterday and the day before." Than yesterday? The day before? What about your calm? You sit up suddenly, causing the girl to jerk back. You notice that they haven't changed your clothes, so you scramble furiously through each of your pockets, desperately looking for a bottle. Nothing. Hey, it's okay." The man steps forward, placing a hand on your wrist to steady it. He has a kindly face, wrinkled and rugged. Bags lie under his eyes, but his hand moves smoothly as he reaches to the side and picks up a plastic tub, labeled in red. "We've been giving you temper." Temper? The fuck? "I can see you've never heard of it," he sighs sadly, looking away. "Perhaps we should explain things properly. Your name is Laura, right?" The man glances down at your work ID from the manufacturing plant pinned to your shirt. "My name is Jason, and this is Ashley. Together, we, and everyone here, are the Freedom. We spread the truth where we can, and distribute temper to as many people as possible. Temper is, well, it's probably better if you see for yourself. Do you want to stand up?" Doing so, you mentally brace yourself for the pain from the multitude of injuries that you must have obtained during the attack. But nothing comes. No wave of dizziness or nausea. In fact, if anything, you feel better. Better than before, even. Healthier. Stronger. More alert than you've ever felt in living memory. What is this? Ash cracks into a grin. Amazing, isn't it? This is how it feels to finally get off of calm. Plus, no hallucinations, no seizures, no nothing. This is what we're trying to get out to people. She jumps away, head tilted back, arms outstretched, gesturing to the bunker walls as she slowly spins around like a ballet dancer. This is the Freedom! In deep contrast, a serious frown flickers across Jason's face. Yes, this is freedom, Laura. You have to understand, everything Ashur has told you, told everyone, has all been to keep you taken calm. Every day, of every month, of every year of your life, because if you stop for even one day, you'll hallucinate and murder those you love most, right? Or perhaps you'll simply feel healthy for the first time in a decade and question why Ashur is allowed to absolutely control every part of your existence. But you've seen them, right? You've seen them, haven't you? People who have stopped taking their calm, skipped doses and been absolutely fine the next day. Perhaps. But you've also seen people go mad, screaming as they were dragged away into the back of an ambulance. Is this man saying that they were acting? The ones who do seem to be hallucinating are almost always screaming for their families, right? Dead relatives, partners. Laura, imagine finding out that everyone who's ever died from an illness or injury in the past 10 years did so largely because they were sedated to the extent that their bodies couldn't heal as human bodies are normally able to. Look at your own body, Laura. Where are your injuries? Vanished. Completely gone. Calm isn't a cure to anything except democracy. It's how James Havoc can stay in power over the people, and his rotten company over everything else. There is no infection, Laura. There never was. There's more, but I'll stop there. I don't want to keep on going for too long.
That is, if I wasn't like really distracted right there, I had a whole bunch of things to say, but the freaking hard drive started filling up. But that is, like, that brings up so much. So, like, there's so much subtext to that. There's so much, sort of social critique that can come out of that scenario where, you know, you've got a society doped on something. And, you're asleep and you don't know it because you're doped on it, and then when you come out of it, you either see reality for what it is or you crack. Like, damn.
It's interesting because the idea behind the game was that it was supposed to be very much like, branching storylines. And I don't really know for sure, but I do know for sure because I have a whole background of what was actually going on. And there's bits throughout all of that where you're being told like kind of the truth or straight up just lies in that entire kind of monologue that I've just done. But it's like supposed to be hopefully convincing to some degree, or at least it sounds like it's a kind of well put together theory. Thank you, Random Aim! Cheering, saying, that's my reading quota for today. Thanks for the audiobook snippet. I think there's plenty more where that came from. We're going to be batting this back and forth for another hour and 20 minutes or so. So 125 bits though. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. But yeah.
Yeah, as I was sort of like envisioning the game that would come out of that, I was actually, my first thought was that it was going to be one of those, manage your sanity kind of games, Lovecraftian
Yeah.
horror kind of. You've got the sanity bar filling and depleting.
Yeah, that was one of the ideas, I think. Essentially being able to choose whether you're taking calm or temper and the effect it has on you. And there was hopefully going to be something where you are never explicitly told the effects of either of these drugs, so your decision to take it is largely influenced by like how compelled you are by the morality of the situation you find yourself in, which drug you kind of end up supporting. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, I really geek out when I do these kind of things. And one of the next ones I'll read at some point is a proper geek out. I have like a whole system of mechanics behind it on an entirely different project.
Well, and Sir
But for
Emo
now-
Chappington brings up "We Happy Few" and says, "So a we happy few, but less boring." Which actually, like when I glean on that, when I think of that in relation to what you just read, suddenly I'm thinking, oh, that would be such like great, background to what's going on. Is that you're like moving through a town and like people are just, you're breaking shit open, you're destroying things, you're looting their houses and stuff, and they're just sort of smiling calmly and, so
Doped up.
how are you liking the weather now? And you're just like tossing things over and breaking it apart, and people are just like, that was an heirloom from my mother.
Oh God, my grandma's ashes. Oh. We
I'll
Happy
just grab a
Few, I
broom.
watched like I think I watched a let's play of it in the weeks before writing that, so it was heavily inspired. I'm glad someone recognized and made the comparison. Yeah. I think that was my motivation actually, was that I kind of felt that the actual subtext behind We Happy Few, even though it was an interesting idea, I felt like the story was a bit lacking, so I wanted to write something a bit more gripping and had a bit more legs, a few more legs.
Yeah,
Few
wasn't
more
the big
legs? That's
complaint
not the
about that
phrase.
one? Because I definitely saw some gameplay footage of it. The big complaint being that it was like, it suffered from its RNG, from its procedural generation and stuff like that. The storytelling kind of had to back down a little bit in order to accommodate. Am I right in that?
Maybe. I think maybe did feel a little bit bloated, and there was some distractions to the story that I think were quite transparently designed to make the game longer. But I don't really know what kind of procedural RNG they actually had in there. Does anyone in chat know what they had in there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I may be confusing, things in past, but I feel like at the very least you'd end up like hunting around for the objects and the items that you needed to, I think I remember hearing complaints, because I never played it, just watched other people playing it, but that it almost had pangs of old school adventure games where you don't know what, like, where you're just kind of running around looking for shit, like old adventure games where
There's
it's like,
a
oh,
lot
well,
of that, for sure.
obviously you need to like connect the string to the hook in orre to feed it through the mouse hole and then pull out the scepter that was taken by the mouse that you didn't see earlier in the game. Like that kind of weird adventure game storytelling where you just have to try and combine things, where not necessarily the same thing in We Happy Few, but that you are kind of running around like a chicken with your head cut off, in that similar fashion. Like, I need a thing, I don't know where it is, I don't necessarily know what it is, but I know I need a thing at this point.
Definitely. I remember seeing on the Let's Plays a lot of just sprinting through fields. Why are you sprinting through fields? Well, there's a car in this direction according to the map that has a generator that I need to take back in the opposite direction to give to a woman who's a mad scientist. Just like, it's kind of the classic cliche, like World of Warcraft. Hey, if you can fetch me 10 badger pelts, I'll maybe give you the next clue on your adventure. Bit arbitrary.
Yeah, but I did
so
play,
Emo Chappington
up to like level 68 and a 70 max cap. Wow, so they did it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, they kept you in there.
I mean, they had
that
like what they had in their writing and in their story design and their mission design is, yeah, it's a bunch of grindy shit, but they had sort of the RuneScape like good storytelling that was both visual and scenario, and like it was all there, and less so the longer you went on, because then the missions got bigger and bigger, and kill 1,052 wombats and I'll give you the thing. But it was there that there were stories being told, that like the scenario that you'd come into and be like, oh wow, it's a jungle environment, and then the stories that they're telling would have like references to stories that from literature or from childhood stories and stuff like that, and it kept it going. It made it feel alive and real, very much like RuneScape did. RuneScape did incredibly well with their original offering, in just putting you into a world and then giving you things that you were familiar with, but letting you like live them out. Romeo and Juliet story, but you're the guy running around like helping them do all of the things and stuff.
Oh, I remember that very vaguely. I played RuneScape a lot when I was younger. I think it was quite possibly my first real video game that I played for any length of time. And actually was one of the leads into my whole creative video editing endeavor. Oh, the stream's buffering. Are you still there, Paul?
We're dropping some frames right now, but not that many. Hopefully it will hold
it's completely
together
frozen
for
for
us.
me. I don't know if the audio... Okay, the audio is coming across at least. So I can just keep on talking. RuneScape,
it's
I was
buffering.
so into it and felt like I was in it that I wrote, directed, recorded, edited these mini comedy skits. I made a YouTube series in RuneScape of like this guy's adventure and the friends that kind of hindered him along the way. And I don't think the videos exist anywhere anymore, but God, I wish I did, because that was back when I was kind of verging through puberty, somewhat still prepubescent, and I was very conscious about how high my voice was, funnily enough. So I used Audacity to pitch shift my voice down.
I actually
which
did
is
some pitch
God's
shifting
joke about my life.
on both of us in the short today's skit that will be coming up. And you won't know because I did it so damned well, but I had to do some pitch shifting.
Holy shit. Why did you have to do some pitch shifting?
I just wanted certain deliveries to be like snappier than we had given them, so I sped them up and then had to pitch shift them so that they wouldn't sound like I sped that kind of thing. But yeah, with RuneScape, I remember there's like an island at some point in the game, and I went out to the island and started playing there, and it might be a members only kind of a thing, because at some point I did start paying for it because I was so into it. And the stories on the island, I remember being so gleeful, and maybe I was just putting it there, but it seemed as though they had designed like a series of missions on the island after Harry Belafonte's Banana Boat song. Sleep all day and a drink of rum, daylight come and me won't go, or work all night and a drink of that one, Hey, Mr. Tallyman,
Vaguely.
tally me banana. Daylight come and me one go home. Day, me say 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 day, you. The Banana Boat song, and it's all about, being out in the fields in the jungle collecting bananas in order to like deliver them to the boat, and a beautiful bunch of ripe banana, mighty deadly black
island.
tarantula.
That island was wait, is Kilimanjaro the real mountain? It was named something like Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, it definitely
Fairly
was.
sure.
Yeah, started
Yeah.
with a K and it had like a J.
The dragon was underneath that mountain, wasn't it? Surrounded by demons. Remember that?
Oh, I no, that I don't remember.
Yeah.
I just remember the
Yeah,
Harry
that was-
Belafonte thing, finding like rum.
You just got to the
I found
you got
rum
to
in
the
a
bananas and you were
thing.
like, "Hey, that's good enough for me." No need to go any
rum.
further.
There were tarantulas jumping out of the trees. I was like, this is the Harry Belafonte song, and maybe it's just maybe it was influenced, maybe it wasn't, maybe it's just the scenario of banana picking.
Wowee. Well, on the note of banana picking, we're about 10 minutes up until halfway through the show. So, do you want to maybe run the segment, seeing as we've mentioned it now?
Yeah, okay. We can run the segment, and then we'll take ourselves a live stream break for everybody to pee. So don't get up and leave during the segment because you'll have a chance right after it. The other thing is, since we are doing the creative writing and we've just got a couple of seconds, I'll read you a poem.
Awesome.
This, I believe, is in iambic pentameter. And I believe the reason I wrote this was because I wanted to see if I could do iambic pentameter. I'm not sure of that, but I think that's why I wrote this. Skies were grey and heavy, wearing sorrow's weight, to and fro, though o'er green the trees below, for faith did fell the garment she had shore above, to warmer fellows lingered under tow. And on the limbs were gathered in the trees the birth that bend the wearied branches to the low, to marry heaven's progeny with salted earth and draw up what the only goodmen sow. Between the draught and firmament stood footed beast who neath the skies abandoned did not know, and lingered there for all his days, now evermore is buried, half the wit beneath the snow. On that
Very
note,
nice.
we go to our one and only segment for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, Harvey and I have figured out a way to sort of solve the issue of creator funding across, platforms like Twitch, YouTube, and Patreon. And we'd like to introduce you to the HP Creator Support Program. Money, money, money. It's a problem. Content creators in particular are faced with ever greater challenges in their need to monetize the videos that brighten all our lives. Brand deals, affiliate links, mid-roll ads, and in-content paid promotion have muddied the waters of your favorite personalities' weekly shows. But what's a viewer to do? How can we meaningfully support creators? And how do we scrape the thick wallpaper of insidious advertising off the genuine content we so enjoy? Until now, there hasn't been much of an answer to that question. But today, Harv and I are here to launch an all-new creator support program we call HP. Like health points?
Like hit points? Like Harv and Porn. That's right. Porn and I have carefully crafted a 27-tier program that allows you, dear video watcher, to support your favorite show and your favorite creators to help us keep paying the utility bills each month. It's virtually seamless and no effort whatsoever.
And we call it HP. Once you sign up at the HP website, totally free sign up, you'll be presented with your very own HP support board. To activate the board, simply enter the email addresses of 3 of your closest friends. Boom! Activation complete. Go take a nap. And rest easy knowing you've literally just saved the life of a content creator who otherwise would have died in a drainage ditch under a highway overpass. While you nap, your friends will receive an email inviting them to join you on the HP Awesome Boards. If they care at all about your friendship, and you should follow up with them to be sure they did click the link in the email as proof that they do care about you, then you'll be seeing your friends soon on the brand new HP Super Mega Boards you've all just unlocked. After, of course, your friends provide the email addresses of 3 of their closest friends as well.
Their closest friends that aren't you, ya sexy thing.
And that's it. We take care of the rest. Content creators get paid, and you don't ever have to suffer through one of those invasive marketing pitches in the middle of the content that you love.
Wait. Unless you like making money too?
No, Harv. You don't think...
Then we should open up this incredible financial opportunity to viewers at home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In Tier 2, you take on the role of Gold Leaf Earner, and your HP profile will show it with gilded flair all across the HP Mega Cash boards. All you do is load $3 into your HP account to activate it. And don't worry, those $3 aren't going anywhere. That's your money and you can take it out whenever you like. Once you're a Gold Leaf Earner, anyone else on your HP Ultra Boss Epic board who signs up to Tier 2 as well earns you cash. And that's not just the friends you invited, but your friends' friends and your friends' friends' friends. And your friends' 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 friends too. We call it the HP Donor Pyramid.
The HP Donor Cone of Happiness. In fact, now that you're making money off of this, why not invite more people? Family, neighbours, old primary school teachers. How long has it been since you touched base with Mr. Robbins from 3rd grade PE? Too long! And he'll appreciate this wonderful financial opportunity that you've brought him.
But wait a second, Harv. The real money doesn't start rolling in until Tier 2. Should we let the people at home in on Platinum Emerald level earner bonus rewards too?
I think we'd be absolute cads if we didn't. In Tier 3, simply register the number of a burner phone and add Harv and Porn as a signatory to your primary bank account to unlock your new HP Ultra Blast Max 7 Green and Gold payday boards. Packages of white powder will soon begin arriving to the nearest alley adjacent to your home, and that's when... Now that you're part of the Black Diamond Mega Obelisk Silver Earner crew, entry into Tier 12 will require a sacrifice of your firstborn's blood.
It's just to seal the vows of Cthulhu and enter into Congress with the Dark Lord Mammon, so don't worry, it's just paperwork we've got to file.
And if you don't have any children yourself, that's not a problem. Simply go to your nearest candy store and pick up some treats for the local playground in your area around lunchtime.
At Tier 18, attendance of all corporate-sponsored orgies will be required. Oh, yes please.
is Requiem.
If you've completed Tier 23's rites successfully, you'll begin speaking in tongues as Harvey will show us now.
Eos sondestin met not miek. Don mognigrag wagbog vilak. Kalmanurin adar. Der nanak. Der nanik.
Just like that.
And that's it. Now that you're a Mega Platinum Gold Diamond Rhodium Palladium Mega Earner, you can join us at our HP Penthouse block here in Clearwater, Florida.
How simple! And you can lavish yourself in all this luxury knowing that you helped internet content creators do what they love without having to inject all that insidious third-party marketing and self-promotion into their content.
From all of us here at the HP Connor Cashflow headquarters, thanks for watching. We can't wait to see you join us on the Uber Duper Super Mega Doobly Doo boards today. And, as we always say,
sign up now with the promotion code MammonIsKing to receive immediate upgrade to Black, Silver, Gold Leaf, Crystal, Topaz bonus rewards today. Some pentagram assembly required. Hello? Hello? Yes, we're live. So Harvey hadn't seen that.
So good.
I finished editing it about 10 hours ago. I pulled almost an all-nighter in order to get done with that son of a bitch.
I was laughing all the way through. That was so good. Because I only really, I skim-read the script when you first sent it to me. And then when it came to record my parts, I basically just recorded my parts and didn't really look at your parts. So I had an idea what was going on. I didn't realize just how much of it there was, and you edited it perfectly. I think, absolutely spot on. Just with the timing, the stock footage, the VHS, disruption. You got the colors really good on the pentagram and the Månsgapida. Like, well done.
If
That's our
anything,
best one
thank
yet.
you. Thank you. If anything, I shouldn't have taken as long editing it because we're supposed to like crank these things out, go on to the next one. But I was like, every time that I like tried to stop and go on to the next phase, I'm like, but that needs a little extra something to the layer. Just be stuck adding like a dust breeze to a scene.
Oh boy. Well,
Ladies and
worth it.
gentlemen,
I mean,
boys and girls,
yeah.
that brings us to a break here. It's supposed to be a 5-minute break. It might be a little bit longer because I definitely need to pee and some other things between the break. But we will be back after this break, so take this opportunity to grab yourself something to make life better. And join us back here for more reading. I've got a hell of a thing to read you when we come up here. Hologram 1 is going to love this. But yeah, 7-minute live stream break. Mm-hmm. We will be back shortly. Us
Harv
not...
and porn, not out.
Yeah.
Please listen carefully.
And we're back. I don't know how long
Welcome.
it's been T-minus now, but we're back.
Approximately 2 minutes. The chat and I had a very nice long conversation.
Oh, okay. I'll feel free
No,
to take
it's
that
just been
long
a few
to pee.
seconds. Don't worry.
And other things in future then.
Well, actually, it's fair enough because I noticed that you said 7-minute break, and then the timer was only 5 minutes. So, you alluded to the fact you were going to take slightly longer, so it's fine.
And that's just out of habit. I've got it down. I know exactly how long it takes me to just midstream break myself.
We should add it onto the notes for this week to up that to 7 minutes, because I think it would be nice. And
yeah.
we both tend to say it, so.
Could have a separate scene, could play different music. No problem for that. I like it.
Yeah, loads of work.
So, did you guys enjoy the skit then from this week? Because, yeah, I was literally up until 5:36 this morning. Still editing
My God.
it. You have no idea how close I came, but over and over again to saying, it's just not going to be done this week. We'll just have to push it off until next week. And then I just found a way and found a way and found a way. The web page that I used was Herbalife, who is like one of the still existent MLM, clearly a friggin' pyramid scheme. They've been, indicted several times by the federal government over here and just barely come out, just barely get by and stuff like that. So I used Herbalife for some of this stuff. And then I found another one that I'd never heard of, I think Nutrium or something like that. But basically, if someone is selling you dietary supplements, it's a scam. Because there's a big profit margin on throwing non-FDA approved crap that really isn't anything in a pill and then telling you this will help your kidneys. So a lot of people...
It was interesting on that note, just briefly. I conducted some interviews recently for a web developer position for the company that I work at.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, when we asked them, like, at the end of the interview, do you have any questions for us? One of them said, have you guys considered selling supplements? And our director's response was, we considered it. And then we decided not to. And he kind of just explained, like, it's a really, really badly regulated market. And it's incredibly just sketchy. And there's no way we would get into that.
Yeah, it's almost like a sign now, like to those who know, just when you see somebody selling nutritional supplements, it's like, well, there goes your credibility. Who's the red-faced guy who shouts, conservative propaganda and conspiracy theories and stuff like that for a living?
Donald Trump?
No, the other one. There's two. They're multiplying. But yeah, he's got like a podcast, in the style of a radio show. Kind of what we do here, fake background in front of a desk. But yeah, his whole thing is like he'll go from talking about how, like Sandy Hook was a staged thing paid with child actors and none of those kids were actually killed, to telling you how you need to buy their survival packets on the website now for $60 a piece for some dehydrated water. Alex
Ice cubes that have been sweated.
Just add water, dehydrated water.
How do they get water up to the ISS? Well, they have to dehydrate it first. That's great.
It's just
There's
lighter
something in
weight.
there.
Oh, God. You made me laugh. I haven't got enough sleep. My head is just spinning.
Oh, no.
I did start the day with a cup of coffee, and my coffee maker's been broken for months and months and months. I got all this soldering equipment in, and it was like, I'll fix it myself, and haven't touched it. So now what I do when I want to make coffee is I make a pour over using the just plastic coffee filter that I pulled out of the coffee maker. Just set it over the cup, put it in there, and then a little bit of water at a time.
Have you not considered just instant coffee?
I suppose I just don't I don't make coffee enough, so I just buy the coffee.
I see.
So much sugar in the instant stuff, it would be probably good for me. It'd probably be a nice pick-me-up.
Oh.
Actually,
Emo
when I traveled
Chappington's
to...
investigating my company, it seems. You do provide supplements for healthy ear canals. It's true.
Oh,
That product is kind of a brand we own, though. I don't think we actually manufacture that thing. But uh, it's not exactly the same as the supplements market that we're discussing, but sure. Sure, you can have
well,
it.
he could just be referencing, our lovely voices, too. We're supplementing your
Oh.
ear canals today by reading
Oh.
to you from some of our creative writing projects throughout the year. Stay tuned for more of that, and we'll be snipping your hair with some scissors later.
Snip, 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 snip. Anyway, would you like to read to us the thing you were also excited about reading to us before the break?
Yeah, okay. This one's long, though, so I don't know where I'm going to have to cut it off. Because it goes on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 8 pages, apparently. 7 in some pages, so I'll have to cut it off at
Ooh.
some point. But to
Well,
preface...
it's okay. Just go for it because the next one I want to read is probably fairly long as well. So
Oh,
take
okay.
your time.
Okay. The preface for this is that I don't want to explain any of what's going on in here and just see what comes together for you. But I will say this. When I was writing it, I was sort of torn between... I just was indecisive whether to write it as a screenplay or as, like a novel kind of a thing. So it ended up kind of being both at once, which,
Oh.
now that I've seen that, I don't hate it as like a very unique kind of a style, because it does just describe what's going on, but then at certain places it kind of just describes the scene, and it's very interesting anyway. I thought it was interesting how it came together on the page, but this is called... Maybe I don't tell you the title even until we get to the end of it. So... So... A woman sits outside a bistro looking intense. Specifically, she is not nervous. She is suspicious, paranoid, except whatever paranoia is called when they really are coming for you. Something bad is on the way. She knows that. But from what angle? From whom? To be clear, the situation this woman is in most certainly qualifies as distressing, but she is not a damsel therein. As she sits alone at a table that would be empty if not for the tiny vase containing the single flower, keeping her, just water thanks, in good company, her eyes scan the other patrons' faces for signs of malice. As she does, she catches an eye or two that quickly dart away as soon as they've met. Is this person a threat to her? That one? Or do they just not care for strange women staring judgingly at them while they take brunch? But the danger is real. From what angle? From whom? She rises slowly from her table, watching the crowd intently, taking special care to keep the most suspicious of those darting eyes in her peripheral vision. As she skirts the table's edge, she slyly palms a large serrated steak knife from a table next to hers. Her shoulders pull back, her chin lowers, her body turns to face the aisle flat. Shit's about to get real. Who is this woman? A man in a trench coat comes into focus at the end of the aisle. His jowls sink down his face as soon as their eyes meet. He frowns intensely and moves quickly toward her, faster with every step. She takes a wider stance, puts one leg back. She grips the knife, distressed, but not a damsel. The frowning man, whose face is twisted into wrinkles on the approach, stops in front of her, 3 inches between them, chest to chest. His jaw falls open as his eyes drift down her neck and shoulder. He takes one labored breath, meets her eyes again. Tears well, a single one escaping down his cheek, as he says, embarrassed, "I'm sorry." He buries himself in her, collapsing into a "please just hold me" position, and cries quietly on her shoulder. She stands saying nothing, still watching the crowd, allowing this man to awkwardly hug her. Her eyes are wide. Is she confused? Yes. Is she distracted? No. Whatever this is, there's another shoe here somewhere. and she'll be ready when it drops. She presses her knife against the sobbing man's kidneys for insurance, her attention evenly divided between the looming threat of the crowd and keeping watch that the fellow gently sobbing into her neck doesn't move in a threatening way. At last, he takes a deep, clearing breath, having cried himself out. He pulls his head slowly back from her shoulder, his eyes half closed, half dreaming, follow to her lips. His head eases and twists gently as he presses into her. Their lips touch. Boom! Glass shatters and silverware pings off sidewalk as the table behind her overturns. The open palm of her right hand hangs in the air where a quick jab to his sternum sent this sobbing Casanova stumbling back. The left grips the steak knife backhanded, ready to Steven Seagal anyone else who fancies coming in close to get a little sugar. The erstwhile sobbing man catches and steadies himself on a nearby table, where sit a justifiably perturbed, well-dressed couple sipping mimosas. His head dangling down, his eyes on the floor, the Casanova speaks. "I'm sorry. It was just really bad this time." His eyes raised to meet hers, puppy dog, sad and apologetic, begging forgiveness. Then he draws a pair of pistols from within his coat and unflinchingly fires into the heads of the well-dressed people to his left. Simultaneously, the other pistol goes to work precisely headshotting 4 other patrons of the bistro as seated in an arc from left to right, behind and to either side of our knife-wielding woman. 6 shots, then everything stops. The woman looks down at her body. No holes. She, along with the remaining bistro patrons, he didn't just shoot to death, who have mainly retreated below their tables and behind their chairs, all hold still and silent, unsure of, well, pretty much everything at this point. The sobbing man turned Casanova, now gunman, holds his arms and guns outstretched at the angles of his last shots fired, his eyes, her eyes, locked to one another. He smiles at her, a goofy, teethy, forced smile, as if to say, "Well, isn't this awkward?" Boom! The bistro door kicks open behind him. He looks up and to his right, not toward the door, draws a bead with his right pistol and fires a single round at a rooftop across the street. Pop! While left pistol targets a door being pushed open on his side. Pop! The bistro's patrons scatter as the gunman continues firing from his unmoving position at various windows, rooftops, and doorways along the street. Behind him, a confused and frightened but menacing-looking young Hispanic man in a black leather jacket fights to push through the panicked patrons, rushing past him at the bistro's entrance. The woman, having given up on making sense of the scene before her, finally snaps to action. She flips the knife she holds in hand, catching it by the blade above her head. She throws it center mass at the gunman's chest. Without missing a beat or indeed a single shot, he shifts his weight out of its path, his eyes still focused on a distant target, firing off a final round. The spinning knife sails past him, plunging instead into the neck, just above the clavicle, of a confused and frightened but menacing-looking Hispanic man who'd pushed through the crowd directly behind the shooter, drawn gun in hand. The woman, distressed but not a damsel, flinches as her knife finds the unintended target, taking half a step forward before catching herself. The gunman, done firing at random roof lines and windows, drops an empty pistol from his right hand, taking a brief moment to breathe, but before quickly turning on his heel, kneeling at the menacing Hispanic man and pulling out the knife. The young man draws a sudden, high-pitched breath of pain as his eyes squeeze tight and his body lunges up, as if to take refuge in his chest. The gunman, perched at the young man's side, hovers over him, waiting for his eyes to open, waiting for their eyes to meet, silently demanding that the young man look at him. Their eyes lock. The gunman's face flashes anger for a single lost microsecond as he stabs the tip of the knife back into the no longer confused and no longer menacing-looking, very, very frightened young Hispanic man's aorta. The anger gone, he pulls it left to right. "Stop!" yells the woman, still stood in her half-step of regret. The very, very frightened Hispanic man's death is painful and gruesome. The gunman stares into his eyes as he coughs and dies, coldly and without emotion. The woman, for the first time, considers running. "Don't run," he begs in a voice as innocent and empty of malevolence as a 4-year-old child.
though meanwhile training the pistol he still holds in his left hand on her as he fishes through an inner pocket of the dead man's leather coat. That won't work. An awkward silence passes as he fumbles in the dead man's pocket. Stuck every time, he mumbles to himself. Every friggin' time. He shoots a glance at her, pausing in his efforts, then turns his head back down toward the corpse. I really am sorry about that earlier. The kiss, I mean, and the crying. I don't think I'm sorry for the hug. That was good. I guess I needed it. You know, I just needed it? Half to himself, he speaks. Well, duh, of course you needed it. Good God, look at this. Look at you. Look at her. He stands up from the dead man, having retrieved a small bundle of documents, still training the pistol on her, almost errant-mindedly, as he crosses to the reclining corpses of the well-dressed couple, the first to die, at the table next to hers, all the while talking. I mean, hell, maybe it helped. Who knows? I don't know. You don't know. He slaps the documents down on the table where the bodies are slumped, a half-size manila envelope with a photograph paperclipped to the front. Honestly, in retrospect, I should have just grown a pair and gone for it earlier. He reaches into the dead woman's purse, producing a similar packet. Not that I don't recognize that that's kind of sleazy, but come on, given the circumstances, he gestures outwardly, who's it gonna hurt? Her eyes flit across the scene of carnage before them before meeting his again. Her front teeth clench together as she raises her eyebrows to him. Suddenly, he smiles and laughs, genuinely, like a child. Well, that's something else entirely, though, isn't it? He sighs in relief. As though out of habit, he slaps the reclined corpse of the well-dressed woman forward in her seat, her head pounding down onto the table as he moves to her brunch partner, reaching into the well-dressed dead man's breast pocket. He presents a third identical packet, placing it onto the table, then giving the body a similar slap from behind, producing similar table-shaking results as he walks over to address the woman head-on. Right, so these people here were here to kill you, or at least they would have. It wasn't expressly what they were intending, but you didn't give them much of a choice in the matter, did you? Her eyes finally focus on the photos laid on the table. Photos of her. I mean, it's not your fault. You didn't do this. They are definitely the bad guys here. And I mean, definitely the bad, especially that one. He points to the dead man in the leather jacket, now sporting a Colombian necktie, sans the tie. Well, maybe that's not fair. Actually, he's just an asshole. He was so much trouble. I'm sorry, but he suddenly becomes aware of himself, still training the gun on her. He brings his arms in, pointing the barrel to the sky. He starts again, sincerely this time. I'm sorry. This isn't how we do this. In one fluid, practiced motion, he releases the gun's clip into his left hand, gently tosses it onto the table amidst the corpses and the documents, racks the slide, popping the unspent bullet from the chamber, catching it in midair, spins the pistol in his right hand, the grip offered to her, the barrel pointed back at him, and proffers the bullet between the thumb and forefinger of his left. She approaches, slowly, tentatively, eyes wide, watching his. She carefully takes the gun and bullet, pausing as she places her fingers on the bullet. He smiles that awkward, forced smile again. She takes one large step back, then turns her back to him. He stands there sheepishly, waiting. He bites his lip. Listen, Sarah, I think I fucked up. She spins around, pointing the gun at his head, and pulls the trigger. Click. Yeah, that one tends to jam. Who the fuck are you? Shouts Sarah. Right, sorry, Jim. Sarah, nice to meet you. Jim extends his hand. She doesn't. You're crazy. Yeah, that ship sailed. You're going to prison. Never been, in fact, surprisingly. Psych ward, yes. That was nice, actually. Sarah starts slowly putting distance between them. Suddenly she speaks as though she's on his side. You need to go. The police are coming. They'll catch you. She's trying to manipulate him into getting the hell away from her. He steps in and tries to take her hands. She pulls away before he can. Sarah, I think I fucked up. I fucked up. Bad. Sarah looks over his shoulder at the bodies. You think?
Jim smiles in genuine amazement and laughs again, another sigh of relief. Seriously, Sarah, I think there are two of them. Sarah is slowly shaking her head, dumbfounded at the madman before her. There are definitely two of them, at least. Sarah, speaking slowly as to a child, two of what, psycho? Jim's jaw slackens as his eyes drift into the middle distance. Oh, shit! Jim reaches into a pocket and pulls out a 2.5-inch by 1-inch capsule-shaped object, holding it longwise by thumb and index finger. He winces and juggles it onto a nearby table. It's clearly hot. I forgot. I can't believe you forgot. How do you forget this? How do you forget this? He angrily grabs a glass of water from the table and douses the capsule with it. Sarah, eyes widened and suddenly irate, suggests, What the fuck? One half of the object is an opaque blue shell, while the other half is a thick, semi-clear plastic, exposing some kind of technology within, housing 4 LEDs. One of them is blinking. Jim, frustrated, turns in circles, looking at the nearby tables, those that haven't already been overturned by fleeing victims of recent events, anyway. Yeah, sorry, Jim is suddenly glib. He lets out a whimper of desperation as he folds over himself and clutches his head in his hands. He's nearly crying. God, everything is upside down today. He breathes deep, the tears audible in the sound of his breath, and starts repeating to himself over and over, What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? As Sarah watches, she's looking at Jim, a mad gunman who just finished mowing down half a block of people, who crescendoed the performance with a near decapitation, and who is only now apparently in the process of losing whatever portion of his shit someone might argue he had hitherto retained. But Sarah is not just looking at Jim. Sarah is also looking at the capsule. On one hand, this is the best opportunity she's likely to have at getting away from said madman. On the other hand, the capsule. As Sarah internally weighs the competing meritoriousness of two life-risking actions, Jim's mantra slowly becomes less frantic and tearful. His hands relocate from head to knees as he regains his composure. Choice time, Sarah. Now or never. The capsule or retreat. Too late. Jim pops back upright, looking maybe a little too content, wipes his nose and sniffs the remnants of his tears away. He takes one big, goofy step forward, grabs a flower pot from the table on which the capsule lies, pops the uncomfortably large plastic device into his mouth. Stop! Do not! And swallows hard as he pulls a swig of chlorophyll from the pot. The middle. I warned you it was long.
Time loop, right?
Yeah. Yep. Time loop.
Have you seen Steins Gate?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, some stuff in that was kind of Steins Gate-esque, but man, that was really good. And I get what you meant by, like, half screenplay, half, like, novel, I guess.
Yeah.
There was one bit where you mentioned a sidewalk, and just the way you said it was like, oh, that's screen directions.
Yeah, absolutely. I just couldn't decide whether I was writing, one or the other, and then it ended up both. And I'm like, you know what? This doesn't not work.
Yeah. It's similar to what I found with that last thing I read, where I'm like writing, you are doing this, you do that, you do this. And it kind of feels, that's not how novels are written, but it feels like it works. And I feel like you've hit a style which just seems to work as well. That's really cool. When did you write that?
I think it's been like a year and a half. In the actual text here too, like where people speak, it's notated the way you would notate it in a screenplay, where it's like Sarah in brackets and Jim in the other and stuff like that. It's pretty curious. The name of that, by the way, is I Know the Future and You Die.
Classic.
But yeah, very deep kind of plot line going on that I had, envisioned about this guy who's stuck in this loop, and we jump into the story like where he's been in the loop for so long, he knows exactly what's going to happen every time, and something happened that shouldn't have happened last time, that's never happened before at a certain place with a certain person, and it couldn't have happened that way, and he's like sort of wrestling with whether he's finally going completely totally insane or if there's something more going on here. And there are two time devices is the thing, and
Oh, that was the two.
he finally ran
So-
into someone at like in a previous time loop that had a time device who had the information at some point, and so their two time loops have been slowly growing together until the last one where they encountered each other and everything almost went to shit and to tits, and Sarah died and Jim almost lost his device, that kind of a thing, so that he ends up on this time loop coming back, and he's just like you know emotionally a wreck and just needs the comfort of Sarah, who he's been spending all of this time trying to save, for reasons that, like, when you go back to the beginning of the story, are just like he started doing it because he thought like it wouldn't be that hard. Like he had run through his time loop so many times he managed to get himself out of the time loop, and then he started thinking about it and he was like, I already know everything, and that woman, she didn't deserve to die, and he had learned some things about her in the time
Oh, I know
loops,
the
and-
situation so well that I can save her pretty easily.
Yeah. And so he got back into the time loop, decided to go back, like he killed himself. You only go back in time when you die, so he killed himself after he'd escaped the time loop and beaten everybody, went back in thinking, just like a video game, I know all the things, I'll just get her out. And it turns out getting her out is fucking impossible.
That's great. Steins Gate. Have you heard of it? I keep on mentioning it. Have you heard of
No,
it?
well, maybe I've heard the name, but I don't know anything about it.
Oh, okay. Brilliant anime. It's like one of those top 10 of all time anime.
Oh, okay.
There's a bit in it which explicitly is very similar to this on like the setting and the emotional level, where the kind of main two characters, one is stuck in a time loop, but he keeps on choosing to go back because he's trying to save the life of his friend, and she keeps on dying. And so he's like, fuck, there's kind of it's the stream model where there's different streams of time and you can choose which stream to kind of move to. There's one stream that he wants to be on, if I remember this rightly, but the problem is that on that stream she always dies, and so he's trying to find the stream that does what he wants it to do without her always dying. So he's kind of going between these streams and trying to save her on every single one, and it's such an emotional wreck that to begin with he's distraught by every single time she dies, and then by like round 1,000 he's just like, oh, okay, Mayuri dies again. Yeah, that's all right. Oh well, I guess I go back again, and he gets so like wrecked by it that he just stops caring and becomes so desensitized to it.
That's like, I think that I loved this like opening, skit or this opening scene because it was so like visceral and everything. But I think what I was most enamored with this idea was his backstory, which would come out later in the story. But just like realizing that he has already been through this hundreds or thousands of times by the time we meet him, and that he actually got out. So like his emotional state, his mind for this is that
That's
when I think
really
about
good because
when I think about him going back in, it has everything to do with not just that he wants to save this woman, but also because he doesn't know the woman at that point more than he's seen her in these time loops and stuff, but mainly that like he's also addicted to it. Like it's this horrible mind-shattering fucking reality bending thing that he went through, but he went through it so many times, developed all of these fucking skills as a gunman and everything, and knows everything that's going to happen. And once he finally gets out of it and beats all of the great evil forces and he's free and they're all dead, it's like he can't go back to just normal life. He can't go back to not being the guy who knows what's going to happen next, who's popping headshotting the bad guys and stuff like that. So it's like he goes half in because he needs it and won't admit it to himself that he's now a warrior on a battlefield and he can't come off the battlefield anymore, and then finds himself getting, falling in love with and getting absorbed by this woman who he cannot get out of this fucking scenario alive.
it's oh boy, I had one thing I was gonna say and it's just blanked on me now. God damn it.
Have you
If
ever
it comes
seen
back to me, I'll have
Time
to.
for Cuck from Edmund Macmillan? Asked Sir Emo Chappington, and I've never heard of that. No, I'm completely
No,
out of
I've
all
never
of
heard
the
of that
loops.
either. Yeah. Ha, loops. Hey. Oh, right. So the thing I was going to say was
Load
that
of them now.
time being forced to be in a time loop is now a very generic trope.
Hmm.
But I like that you have the extra emotional layer that he chose this. Like he was maybe forced in it in the beginning, but then he chose to go back in. And like that just makes him so much more regretful and guiltful, and like all the kind of God, why did I do this to myself is probably playing in his mind, and
Yeah,
that
and it plays on
video game
like
addiction is
the real world, just PTSD soldier kind of a thing. You've been through shit, you've seen shit. That's a world that you manage to get used to, and then when you leave it, and it's just back to like, picking up the groceries and paying the electric bill and stuff like that. It's there's something missing, and you also are afraid of yourself around normal people in normal situations because of the things you've seen and the things you've been through and the things you've had to do. And so you just feel more comfortable there. And so there's all of that, subtext to be explored too, to make commentary on the real world experience of soldiers who we send to wars and come back never going to be the same person that they left.
Does anybody in chat know the name of that film where there's a family where the guys all have this gene mutation which lets them time travel, but they can only do it by going into a dark space, closing their eyes, and clenching their fists? Does anyone remember that? It's kind of, I think it's a rom-com kind of thing, but it's really good, really great plot points in it. And one thing I particularly like, which is this kind of arbitrary, well, not even arbitrary, it's an unintended consequence of time travel, is that they can only go backwards. So they can redo past mistakes and make everything right and live perfect lives. And they do. Kind of this dad and his son, they realize that they can just go back and kind of fix whatever crap mediocre thing happened in their day. Eventually, though, find the right woman, find like the perfect girl, settle down, have a kid. And the next time they go to travel back in time, they realize that if they go back to before the kid's inception or conception, then the slightest change in what they do will probably lead to a different sperm, fertilizing the embryo. And so it's going to be a completely different kid. Like they've lost their child. If they go back in time, they just lose their child. And so they can't. So they all stop doing it because they just can't bear to go back once they've had a kid. At least not to before their birth, anyway. So
people have really explored this premise, haven't they? Emo Chappington too, like talking about time for cock, as a metaphor for psychological loops and just doing the same thing over and over again and having to change yourself and having to do the hard thing, of not just repeating the same behaviors of past. I had to go to a Zen center to break out of that.
Kid Bob knows the film I mean. The way it ends up is that they just, like Kid Bob says, they relive the same day twice. So the pattern they end up with is that they live one day as normal, not knowing what's coming, just kind of struggle through the day, making mistakes like all humans do. And then they get to the end of the day, and they go back to the start, and then they have the perfect day, where they know what's coming, and so they fix it as they go along, and they live the day they would have wanted to live, and so they just alternate between doing this every day. And it was just a really good film. If someone can find the name of that film, please, because I'd love to rewatch it at some point, and I think Porn you could do with watching it as well. But yeah. Okay. Well, how's our time looking?
I took nearly
20
20
minutes.
I think, on on reading this thing.
Well, it was an entertaining 20 minutes, so I suppose it's my turn to do another 20 minutes. Let me see if I can find it on here, otherwise I'll get up on my computer to do it. This, I think I'll read a couple of chapters from my novel. Ooh. I wrote a novel, or half of a novel, anyway. Which I
wonder
remarkably
if
is...
all novelists, if when they get done with their novel, it's because they decided to stop writing their novel. You know, like if they're all half a novel to the people who are writing them.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably the case for more than we assume. It's so hard to finish a novel. But or at least like you retrofit, you get halfway through and you're like, God, okay, I'm just gonna change it so that this is the ending, you know? I got halfway through because the only reason I was able to write that much of a novel in the first place was because I had exams coming up. And so, gotta do something other than revise for exams. Effective procrastination, start writing a novel. This is the project I was talking about that I have all the mechanics laid out and I have like a science to how everything works in this universe. But I won't spoil that, much like you did. Bavilia, goodbye.
Good
Thank you
night.
for watching.
Thanks
Catch
for
the
coming.
VOD on the YouTube channel to hear this. I won't explain, much like you didn't, any of the background. I'll read the prologue and maybe the first chapter, because that one's quite fun. Then maybe we'll skip through. We'll see how much time kind of goes, I suppose.
Okay.
So, usually the bird was around here somewhere, but today Astra couldn't hear it chirping. Stopping beside a tall apple tree at the edge of the ministry's allotment, she carefully raised one arm into the air in front of her, palm upwards. Perfect. Resting her other hand against the tree, Astra directed it to drop an apple for her. Feeling her mind become fuzzy, her senses dulling, she watched as a few tiny sparks flew out into the air from beneath her fingertips. They twisted and curled as they fell, some disappearing just before hitting the ground, others shortly afterwards. Bark groaned, and as if in protest, a single branch above her twitched ever so slightly. Then, rather anticlimactically, an apple fell into her outstretched palm. Astra munched happily. Where was that bird? She had brought some good seeds today, having liberated them from the chicken coop. Rationally, Astra had decided that if the seed was intended for the chickens, and chickens were a type of bird, then she was probably allowed to give them to other birds too. At least that's what she would say if someone caught her out here when she was supposed to be studying. At 9 years old, nearly 10, Astra knew everything already anyway, so she didn't really see the need to study even more. Hesitantly, she wandered out past the allotment's edge and peeked out into the woodland that lay beyond. No bird today. Sighing, she turned to leave, and felt something beneath her foot. A tiny, now slightly squished wren lay in the grass before her. Birdie? She said, not understanding. Slowly, a vague comprehension of the horror beneath her unfolded itself. Realization snaked its way up her legs, into her chest, then twisted up into her mind, gripping her hearts and thoughts. Astra crouched to the ground, inspecting the tiny bird's eyes, looking for movement. Nothing. Not even a flutter of wings. No chirping. Come on, please. The realization tightened its grasp. Astra's heart pounded in her chest, her vision starting to become more blurry. Birdie! This wasn't fair. This was too horrible to imagine. Please! I said please, okay? Delicately, Astra cupped a hand beneath the small broken form and stood up. She took a small gasp, trying to steady trembling fingers, as her other hand covered the wren's head from the morning sunlight. Lightly, as if trying not to hurt the creature any further, Astra rested one finger between its eyes and directed it to live. Her vision dimmed, sounds became muted, and Astra nearly toppled over. Fighting to keep her balance, she winced and screwed up her face in concentration. Tears ran down her cheeks now as she peered at her friend's body, still clutched as gently as possible in her hands. No sparks flew into the air. Please, please live! She directed it again, and again the sparks refused to appear. This time she did fall over, world plunging into darkness around her. She didn't even feel herself hit the ground, and yet Astra clung desperately to consciousness. Please. Astra strained to look out in the direction of her now outstretched arm. Her body felt heavy, the weight of realization weighing it down. Despite not even knowing whether her eyes were open anymore, Astra could make out two faintly glowing specks through the blackness, staring deep into her soul. Yet, even now, the bird did not chirp. The world faded to nothing, and Astra stopped thinking. Chapter 1. Durst. Decay. Sheep grazed on the grassy bank just in front of Durst's bench. High in the sky, the climbing sun was well on its way towards the ceiling. Durst himself sat on his bench, thinking, absent-mindedly pulling on the wisps of white hair that protruded from his chin. He'd been doing a lot of thinking lately. Behind Durst's bench lay the town of Flotswold. Behind Flotswold lay Durst's own house, at approximately the furthest diagonal distance possible from Durst's bench, while still having both be classed as part of the town. Many residents viewed this as quite unfortunate placement. After all, a man once sufficiently important to have had a bench dedicated to him shouldn't have to walk the length of the town just to sit on it. What many failed to remember, or perhaps had never known in the first place, was that Durst had chosen this positioning himself. Not only that, he had built the damn thing himself. No one had dedicated it to him. Only after Durst had finished his bench had others suddenly started receiving benches with their names on them as recognition for their many varied and valued contributions to Flotswold society. The sudden influx of benches surrounding Durst's own had completely ruined the whole reasoning behind its location, to be away from everyone else. Durst ground his teeth in fury, then grinned to himself. Since that day, Durst had been moving everyone else's benches away from his own. 1 centimeter per day, every day, without fail. He had managed to put in a good number of meters in before anyone had figured out why the trees were migrating closer. Over the years, the council had deemed many people worthy and granted each a bench, until eventually, Durst was shifting a line of 20 each morning. It was how he got his exercise. More from the squatting than the pulling, of course. It was only 1 centimeter per bench. Today Durst had finished his labour and sat with a cut of bread in hand, eyes closed. He paid attention to the rustling of the leaves on the trees, the faint bleating of sheep in the distance, and the ever-so-soft murmuring of the town behind him, as its inhabitants arose and began the day. As he listened, carefully, waiting, Durst slowly became aware of something else. A weight, almost, sat lightly up against the sounds of the world and the feel of air and sunlight on his skin. Not within him, but out there, somewhere, a sense of mass and volume. It pressed gently on his mind, softly moving across him as a shadow might against the ground. Durst could feel something, with all the same degree of certainty that one might feel the passage of time. Becoming aware of this feeling was rather like becoming aware of being thirsty. With the realization of thirst comes the knowledge that you've actually been feeling thirsty for a while already, yet it's impossible to determine exactly since when. Durst had been regarding this sensation for a few months now. He had mentioned it to his family, describing it to the best of his ability despite a wholly unequipped vocabulary, and received the usual looks of concerned pity for his efforts. "Old age," they would say, "does strange things to the mind, Durst." Did they think he didn't fully well know that? He knew that best of them all. Damn it, the chain and back. Having been distracted by his anger, Durst returned to listening, and realized he could no longer feel the weight. Damn. He was sure it was still there, somewhere, but finding it again would take hours. Instead, Durst finished up the bread and stood up to leave. Making his way back into the town, he nodded to the few people he passed. Some nodded back, hesitantly, but most pretended not to notice. As he entered the marketplace, Durst found it bustling with traders setting out the day's goods. The wealthier few, especially those in the trade of particularly heavy items, had loaned ox and were directing them about. Most were burdened with crates of tools and weapons, but Durst noticed one shouldering an entire bench. Bugger. He wondered who it was for. Probably a child of one council member or another. Whenever prodded, the town council insisted that dedications were awarded by a system of merit, so Durst had concluded that merit must be some sort of disease, transmissible through birth or sex. A few of the traders called out to him, cheers of greeting or invitations to trade, but many turned instead to those beside them and whispered the same sad things that everyone already knew. At 82 years old, Durst was about the right age for it. He had already started showing the signs. Slowing speech, trouble navigating, fading eyes. Classic symptoms of a person beyond their time. Durst ground his teeth again, frustration boiling. Wasn't it enough for everyone that they knew? Why discuss the same tired topic over and over whenever they thought him out of earshot? It wasn't that Durst minded discussing his age or condition, it was that nobody wanted to discuss it with him. Whenever he came near, the muttering stopped, and people would brightly turn to him, attempting to grasp new conversation material out of thin air, making pleasant of the day's weather even if it was miserable, or of news from outside the town even if war was looming. Previously, Durst had put forward the topic himself, railing against how long it took him just to find the bucket to piss in it each morning, quipping that when he did finally go to kick it, it would have disappeared before his eyes again and he'd be left immortal until it finally reappeared. Rather than a laugh or a joke, Durst would get sympathy in return, and downward glances. Damn them all. He wasn't that old yet. He probably had years before... Durst was looking at the sky. Why was that? What had he just been doing right now? Dad, come on, let's go. Durst turned to the person who had spoken. Luce, his beautiful darling daughter. Maturity was suiting her well, having filled her out from an awkward, self-conscious girl into a proud and fierce woman. Clutching her hands on either side were Durst's grandchildren, Tech and Mist. They looked up at him, eyes brimming bright with tears. Dad. Durst looked into his daughter's eyes, nearly flinching at the sheer humiliation that burned there. Glancing around, he finally noticed the group that now surrounded the four of them, faces filled with concern and pity, some of the younger ones with quiet amusement. Shame blossomed in Durst like an allergy, flushing his cheeks red with embarrassment, heart pounding against the inside walls of his chest. He looked at the ground. Dad, we're going to take you home. I know. I'm sorry. Let's go. Durst could feel every single one of his years weighing him down then, as he allowed himself to be led away from the marketplace. Onlookers parted before the sorry sight of a decrepit old man, and the family burdened with taking care of him. Inside, Durst raged. So, which chapter shall I go to now? How much time do we have left? Okay, I've got 7 minutes. Random roll. Okay, I'll let you choose a random chapter and just hope it's a decent one. I have, probably something like 14 chapters.
Well, the number it's 5 was what was in my head.
5, okay. Let's see where it goes to. Chapter 3. Someone's messaging me on Discord. I keep on getting beeps in my headset.
Well, I've got a
chapter
cat
5
running around under feet trying to bite at cables and stuff.
Oh, Kidderbob found the film I was talking about earlier. About Time. There you go.
It's about time.
Okay.
Thanks, Kidderbob.
About time for that. Thanks. Chapter 5. Will of the Ceiling. 2 weeks after Erst's death, Astra's guide to the chain finally returned to River's Way. The creature strode into the flickering torchlight, uncontested by those who mourned, and made its way directly to the center of the 4 pillars. This isn't going to make any sense. Let's not read the 5th chapter.
It seemed like it was going to work so well. We just
No. I'll tell you what, we'll go to the one of the final chapters, actually, because I haven't written this in chronological order. One of them I wrote before I wrote any of the rest, actually, so I may as well read that one. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm going to plug that thing in.
I could do with just
Page up.
a contents page.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter Z, CZ. Am I into my appendix already? I have an appendix. Deleted scenes. Here we go.
Your novel is
Okay,
supposed to have
chapter-
appendix. All right, go on.
Here we go. Because it's so scientific. Right, never mind. Unintentional. Jacob frowned at the people. They had taken his favourite spot, just over the hill and beneath the big tree with the apples. Jacob had tried eating one of those apples once, but it had tasted awful, so he'd spit it back out. Peering out from behind a particularly prickly bush, Jacob tried to figure out who these people were. They were all sat around a small campfire discussing something important. Jacob knew because they were using the overly hushed tone that his parents would use each time they found him with a dead mouse or a cat. His parents had thought he couldn't hear the things they were saying, but he always could. They weren't nice things. Jacob hadn't killed the animals himself, obviously. He wouldn't even go near them. They just died whenever he thought about it happening. Knowing that it would happen made it harder not to think about it happening, too. For this reason, Jacob tried to avoid looking at or thinking about people as much as possible. It would be terrible if someone died one day because he had thought about it. These people, however, were hard not to think about. The big tree with the apples curled over them, taunting the flickering embers of their fire as it danced and crackled angrily, the tree's twigs and branches just out of reach. Jacob frowned even more. He wouldn't like it if these people burned down his tree. He inched forwards, moving out from behind the bush, and crawled up on all fours up the top of the hill. It was cold and dark, and shuffling along the ground left scratches on his knees and forearms. He itched absent-mindedly as snippets of conversation floated down from the group. No, I don't know. It doesn't always happen, and I don't understand how I'm doing it when it does. Jacob peered over the crest of the hill. Tents had been set up next to the apple tree. A woman was standing at the edge of the group, looking out towards where the chain split the sky, sun low on the horizon beside it. She turned, glancing in Jacob's direction for just a moment before facing the group. Her group. Everybody there was looking to her for something, even though it was another lady who had spoken. Ducking down, Jacob's blood ran cold. Had the woman noticed him? He shivered, clutching his clothes tightly to his chest, for all the good it did. What was he even doing here? He should have left the moment he knew other people had taken his spot. It's like you're reeling it back in, isn't it? The directive, ordering it to come back to you. Yeah, something like that, but I don't know. I can't explain it. It's okay. It might sound like I know how it works, but really I don't. No one does. We know so little. I'm just glad that other people have managed to do it too. Jacob turned to leave. Behind him, a crow had perched itself precariously on the prickly bush Jacob had just left. The bird's eyes stared into his soul. Jet black specks against off-black feathers, reflecting only the glowing embers of the fire as Jacob's own body blocked the setting sun. His shadow licked against the creature, caressing it. Jacob clamped his eyes shut, screwing up his face in concentration. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't. Of course, he thought about it. Jacob pictured the bird flying high into the sky, folding its wings and plummeting down into the flames above them. Beady black eyes forming a blank, undecipherable expression. The crow would just die without making a sound. Jacob felt his thoughts grow foggy, suddenly overcome with numbness. No! He cried out. Don't do it! Little flecks of light sparked into the air around the crow as it took flight, racing upward towards the ceiling, which sat above them. The conversation behind Jacob stopped abruptly. Who's there? Jacob began to cry. He couldn't help it. It was just the stupid bird. Why had he gone and shouted out like that? He'd ruined everything, again. Frustration twisted itself up tightly deep in his chest. Now the people would find him, and he'd never be able to go use his favourite spot again. Tears streaming down his cheeks, eyes still scrunched up against the world around him, Jacob began to run home. Shouts echoed out from the top of the hill. Jacob tripped. He suddenly realized that running blindly through the undergrowth had been a bad idea. Eyes wide open now with surprise, Jacob fell flat on his face. Stupid. Hands grasped his arms as he struggled to his feet, fighting against the two people who now stood on either side. Let go of me! Jacob yelled, desperate. To his amazement, the hands let go immediately. His parents never let go that easily. Are you okay? What were you doing out here? The woman who had looked in Jacob's direction earlier now crouched before him, considering him in concern. It's getting dark soon. You probably shouldn't be out here by yourself. Where are your parents? Jacob didn't say anything. He just looked down, trying not to think. The couple led Jacob back to the big tree, and the man disappeared into one of the tents, saying he'd get water. Jacob didn't want water, he wanted to disappear. A few moments passed. The woman didn't shout at him, or hit him. The other members of the group began to talk in hushed voices, but the woman shook her head at them and they stopped. A few more moments passed. Jacob looked up. Perched in the big tree was a crow, sat amongst the apples, beady black eyes looking down at the campfire. The bird twitched slightly, then flew away in the direction of the chain. Jacob watched it go, not understanding what had happened. Did you tell him to dive bomb us? The bird? No. No? No, I just thought about it. And it did it. They always do it. Ah, I see. That must have got you into some trouble. Jacob said nothing. The woman waited. The man returned from the tent and handed them both a flask. Jacob accepted his, but didn't drink. The woman took a long swig before splashing some of the water on her hands to wash them clean. She flicked a few droplets at Jacob's face, and finally he looked at her directly. The woman wasn't as old as Jacob had originally assumed. More of a lady rather than a woman like his mother. She watched him, interested. I don't understand, Jacob said. How come it didn't die? They always die. I directed it not to. You can do that? Yes. The woman paused, thoughtful. You're quite young to be able to direct things, aren't you? I couldn't direct anything until I was at least 16, the man said, shuffling down into a comfortable position beside them. In the background, the others had begun chatting amongst themselves, the drama of Jacob's arrival having worn off somewhat. Even then, I didn't know what I was doing. Not that any of us really do, I suppose. But you must be, what, 8 years old? I'm nearly 9, actually. Sure. The man looked pointedly at the flask in Jacob's hands, and finally Jacob drank, feeling his mind slowly beginning to clear, the numbness receding. What's your name? Asked the woman. I'm Astra, and this is Jack. Jack looked away. Jacob. Okay, Jacob, nice to meet you. The sun had almost finished setting now, shadows growing long against the ground as the world prepared for the long night. Astra sighed. We really ought to be taking you back to your parents. They must be worried about you. Jacob looked down at the ground, again. No. They're not. Oh. Well, you can't stay here, kid, Jack said, still looking away. This isn't a place for children, really, and I don't want people thinking we've started kidnapping kids as well as resurrecting the dead. It's bad for our image. Jack. No, it's okay, Jacob interjected. He looked at the woman, Astra. I'll go home. Just tell me how not to think about them, so that they don't die. The animals? Yeah. Astra looked upwards at the tree above them, its lowest hanging branches reaching down towards the ground in every direction, as though embracing the people who sat beneath, protecting them against the world. Jacob's favourite spot. She looked at him and smiled. Just think about them doing something nice instead. And there you go.
Wow.
3 minutes over.
Great story, says Bob. Indeed. I was completely lost in it.
Oh, 10 bits
Although
from
I
Random
note
Aim.
that you are hitting hard on death in every chapter that we read there. Death and death. How do you deal with death? What's death? How do you feel about death today? A little death for you? Would you like some death today? Death.
I know exactly why that was as well. I had just finished reading Terry Pratchett's collection of non-fiction called A Slip of the Keyboard. Now, I don't know how much you know about Terry Pratchett. Have you read any of his books?
I don't think so.
Oh, you absolutely should. They're amazing. But aside from that, he, before he died, was very outspoken advocate for assisted suicide. Because he was, well, amongst several reasons, which he goes into in the book, but he was suffering from Alzheimer's, and made several trips to Switzerland to go visit Dignitas, which is one of those places where you can legally help kill yourself. And he did a lot of kind of campaigning for, not allowing suicide to continue being illegal and assisted suicide. And reading through all of that really impacted me. His collection of nonfiction, and so obviously that kind of was many of the thoughts that went into, especially Durst. Durst is somewhat inspired by Terry Pratchett himself, but yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like the subtext and everything that's going on there. I feel like I already, the story absolutely like unravels itself, and I've only heard the beginning and the end of what you've written.
yeah. The science that I keep on alluding to with like the mechanics that I've got it all figured out. Obviously, that's all this directing business. Like Astra directed that tree to drop an apple, and Jacob directs those animals to kill themselves. It's interesting because it's like taking hard magic to the extreme, where you say, no, this is how it works, this is exactly how it can be used and exactly how it can't be used, and the way in which it uses varies with this parameter, and codifying it to the extreme. Really fun. It's really good to just have done that up front, because it means that it makes the writing so much easier, because I'm like, would they be able to do that? Let me calculate.
I like how the last bit where he's directing the animals to die like opens up so much. I mean, it already has done it in that one chapter there, but just like you're stepping into the world of a sociopath, of the people who are born into the world and who their parents find them killing animals and things like that. And it's like, yeah, but you're not like evil. You didn't choose this. It's just like it is what it is. You're doing it and you feel completely out of place and really weird in a world. And like you get to sort of have the experience of empathy for a character who is in that, situation that we usually use as the primary villains, and, they're the demons of the world and that kind of thing. Yeah, they're just people who were born without, a different emotional ability. And so here's a child who's been born with a with an ability, and that just seems to keep killing things around him.
And it's that kind of downward spiral where you know that you shouldn't think about a certain thing, but knowing you shouldn't think about a certain thing makes you think about it. And just, yeah.
And the
never
fact
gets
that
better.
society, retracts from you ends up becoming the reason why what you are ends up turning dark. Because, like, everywhere you go, people are kind of like, ooh, this person's weird. It doesn't
Horrified.
feel right. Everybody, so you learn to, yeah. Like, the whole sociopath character arc, can be developed right there in that character. And hopefully, my would be to not make them the dark evil person, but to make them like, the person that we're stood next to, who has to deal with all this shit, who just sees the world differently, and then
Definitely. That's
gets
so much more
judged
interesting
differently.
to try and, inspire empathy for someone who does horrific things. Because, yeah, like everyone's human, everyone's got kind of the mental state that leads them to do what they do, There's things to be empathetic about. So just villainizing and having a one-dimensional villain, he just likes killing people, is like the most boring way to do that character.
I just always
Speaking
wanted
of
a volcano with a
character
skull
arcs for
carved.
sociopaths or psychopaths, there's a fantastic Netflix series which a second season has just come out that I haven't seen yet. End of the Effin' World. Have you heard of that?
Oh yes, I believe. I've watched the first season of it.
Yes. In fact,
And
I know
has it
you
come
had,
out?
because
The
we
second
already.
season has come out then, or is it coming out?
So I was told by a friend that it came out on Channel 4, which is one of our British
Ah,
channels,
okay.
but not on Netflix yet. So that was the confusion we had. But yeah. But anyway, that's about all the time we have. So do you have any kind of closing thoughts that you'd like to end on?
No.
Me
I
neither.
was
Just,
thinking,
I suppose, other than generally. No, I don't want to cut you off now that I've asked you what your closing thoughts are, but I would just say quickly that creative writing is something that I love, and I only ever seem to be able to do in sporadic bursts of energy, much like other creative projects. So I tried at the time to make this very slow and consistent, to resist working on it when I wanted to work on it, with the idea that I would burn out too quickly if I let myself do that, and so I forced myself to spread it out. And it didn't work. I just did it because I wanted to do it, and I was like, oh, I could revise, or I could fucking write this novel. So obviously the novel got written.
I actually have, like two things for, for closers. It would be the advice for like writing and really for anything that's artistic. Kind of what you're talking about there is my advice is two things that seem completely opposed to one another. And one is if you want to do something and be very good at it, if you want to do something professionally or just be very, very good at something, do it every day. If it's just 15 minutes a day, like set it aside and make that decision, especially if you want it to be a profession, a career kind of thing. 15 minutes a day, force yourself to do it. Because especially with something like writing, if you are going to sit down and, write and you tell yourself, okay, bare minimum 15 minutes a day, I got to do it. On the days where you really don't want to do it and you force yourself to, one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to write for 15 minutes and go, all right, that's out of the way. I can move on with my day. No big deal. Or you're going to sit down feeling like you don't want to do it and then get up an hour and a half later having just, poured out brilliance onto the page or just feeling really good about it. So one of, my pieces of advice is if you want to be really good at something, playing guitar, making music, writing, whatever it is, do it every day. Force yourself to do just a little bit. Write a page, write a paragraph, something. The opposite or the other thing of that is to do... like to let it come on its own. Like the fact that you're writing or you're painting or you're whatever you're doing every day is your practice. It's just what you do to keep yourself going. But when it comes to like crafting your story or don't try and force it out. If you're looking for inspiration, have experiences, live life, watch other people's media, consume, give yourself the space to come up with something. So like you force yourself to practice on a daily basis, but you don't force yourself to create, a world. You don't force a novel out of yourself, because if it's not there and you're just like, this is what I do for a living, I'm going to do it, you're going to end up with some really shitty art. So practice it every day. Don't force your art, though, is kind of my advice.
I completely agree with both of those points. And it both directly relates to two things that I've thought about recently. I think we should make this into a discussion topic. If you'd like to see that, Patreon, Twitch subscribers, vote in a poll that will come out on Saturday. Two things. So for the first one, consistency is absolutely key. And there's a lot of kind of myths. There's a great podcast by two brothers, actually, Ali and Taimon. One of them, big famous YouTuber, the other one, data scientist, called Not Overthinking. And one of their episodes is specifically about consistency. And they mention in it this myth of inspiration is required, or motivation, inspirational motivation, whatever you want to call it, is required for action. So, I need to be inspired to write a book before I can write a book. Or I need to be inspired to play the guitar before I can play the guitar. This kind of myth of I need the motivation, I need to feel like doing it before I can do it. When in reality, it should really be the other way around. And in fact, the other way around works better. You don't need inspiration, you don't need motivation, you need discipline. Force yourself to do something, and what you'll find is that action leads to inspiration over time. And I feel this really strongly, especially recently. I stopped making YouTube videos for a long time. I had no ideas to make videos during that time. I had the urge, I wanted to, like I had the kind of creative need to express myself, but I didn't have the ideas. Since starting to make videos again, making videos has begotten more videos. Now the ideas are bubbling everywhere. So action leads to inspiration. And that's way better than the other way around. And it's way more realistic than the other way around. So discipline. And the other thing you said about don't force yourself to, if you don't have a novel in you, you can't force yourself to write a novel. It's not going to work. You're just going to make shitty nonsense that's, derivative at best. That ties into this as well. Action leads to inspiration. You can do the action and inspiration will come. but it's still a matter of having to do the action until the inspiration comes. So keep doing it, get good at it, and you'll find that you become inspired. So that was the first point I have to make. The second point...
Well, before you get to the second point, I just want to say that's very Zen. Behavior leads the mind. People think that the mind leads the behavior, that you think, you make decisions, you come up with ideas, and then, what you think becomes real. But, your behavior is what guides the mind, and through behavior you can change your own mind and be able to make serious changes to yourself and your personality, not by wanting them, not by thinking them, not by, hating yourself, not by anything that happens in the mind, but through behavior. If you're depressed and you've been going through a deep, dark depression, through behavior, if you can get yourself up out of bed, open the windows, let the light in, clean the place, even though you don't want to, even though it's like physically painful for you to do so, you can break a depression by your behavior of going against it. Because once you start doing, the mind has to follow. The mind can't resist the energy of force that is there in your physical, what you are actually doing. It can't, be over there while you're doing this. It can try, but 5-10 minutes into any activity, you're now doing this and your mind's in agreement with it. So if you set about to do something, you don't wait for your mind to come around for it. You do it, and then your mind comes.
The hardest part is always starting. We need to have the whole discussion topic on this. I really think we should, because we both have a lot to say on this. I'll finish off now with one last quick point. You said, set aside the time to consume the videos and the things to be inspired. Well, read a book recently by Austin Kleon called Show Your Work. And it's just a short kind of guide for people who are trying to be creative and how they can realize their hobby and promote themselves without feeling scummy for promoting themselves. But one of the great points in it is that to be interesting, you must be interested. You're not going to be able to produce material which is inherently interesting to people without yourself having very deep interests in whatever topic you're loosely relating your work to. If you don't care about computer science, you're not going to make good computer science videos. So be interested, do the reading, the watching, set aside the time and study in a way, but don't think about it as studying. Just immerse yourself in the kinds of things that you want to make. And don't fear the lack of originality, because you will become inspired through that process. So, yeah, there you go. Topic for another time. I'm sure we have loads of points we can go into in that. If you are interested in hearing that as a discussion topic, you, my dear video watcher, can have your say on patreon.com/harvandporn. For as little as $1 per month, you'll gain the right to vote in our polls, which we run weekly for the upcoming shows of what topic we should discuss. And if you'd rather not be a patron, then you can become a Twitch subscriber and get the exact same privilege, as I've called it in the past. But otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching Harv and Porn. I've really enjoyed this one. I think this one has been really, really good.
Yeah, it's fun.
One of our best yet, especially with the skit in the middle. That was great. So all of that will be available on YouTube, and otherwise, thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Harv, porn, Harv, porn, Harv and porn, and 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 Harv and porn. Harv and porn.
And we are clear. Good job, I guess. I wasn't really watching.